Hi, my name is Marty Beckerman, and my favorite thing is the 1990s.
Welcome to the Finding Favorites podcast, where we explore your favorite things without using an algorithm. Here's your host, Leah Jones.
Hello and welcome to Finding Favorites. I'm your host, Leah Jones, and this is the podcast where we learn about people's favorite things and get recommendations without using an algorithm. I'm here today with Marty Beckerman. Marty and I believe, met on a trip to Israel when you booked the hostel first, and I followed your lead, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Marty's here to celebrate the launch of his newest novel. And yeah, Marty, how are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. How are you, Lee?
I'm good. Is that right? Didn't we we were maybe in a Facebook group, and I feel like you booked the Gordon Beach hostel, and I was like, Marty says it's fine, I'll go there too.
I was smoking so much hash. I don't know who booked what. I stayed in that hostel, and some guy, I wouldn't even know where to buy hash, but he had a bunch of hash, and he's like, going to go to the beach and smoke some hash. And the entire next week, I was just smoking hash on the beach with this guy all day long. Just super high all the time. And this week, I'm like, dude, what's your name? I don't even know if he ever told me.
Right?
So that's a way to start an interview.
Right.
But I'm not, I haven't smoked any hash today. I'm a new dad, so, I gotta.
You're emotionally there.
Yeah. I live in California, but I haven't enjoyed any cannabis since the baby was born, because you gotta be present, and you gotta wake up in the middle of the night. I would have indica to fall asleep. I'm not even that much of a stoner. It's I sound like Seth Rogen. I'm not even that much of a stoner. But you can't wake up in the middle of the night with a crying baby and you're still kind of high, and the goal is to not drop a baby.
That's a solid goal.
Yeah.
Don't drop the baby. Don't shake the baby. Those are the top two.
Yeah.
Feed the baby when it's hungry.
I could be wrong, but I feel like hash would increase the odds of dropping a baby.
I feel like it would be bad.
Yeah,
it would be bad.
So I'm clean and sober now.
Yeah.
My only drug is protein powder these days. and Celsius. I load up on Celsius before the gym. That stuff's the best energy drink.
Oh, it's an energy drink?
Yeah, they make two different kinds.
It's not a spiked seltzer?
No. Celsius it's just caffeine and a bunch of B vitamins and guarana and a bunch of, or I don't know what they put in it, but I work out harder. One of my coworkers was telling me about it. I'm like, it can't be that good. And then I had it, and I'm like, it's pretty great.
So I saw a TikTok this morning about how Gen Z on college campuses now make something called borg. They go to parties and they carry gallon jugs of their own punch that they've mixed themselves. And which is great. It means you're not dipping into a trash can of jungle juice. That's may or may not be roofies.
I thought Gen Z didn't drink though.
I don't know. This is a new thing. I think Gen Z in the South still drink.
Oh, okay. Because what I had heard, and I have some Gen Z friends who actually do kind of drink, but from everything I've heard, they're more into psychedelics and vaping and Adderall.
Right. So I saw this TikTok of it was a snow day at UT Austin, and this girl was showing how to make a good borg, and it was half a gallon of water, a third of a bottle of Tito's, a bottle of Mio drops for flavoring, and then a packet of liquid IV, and then she poured a Celsius in, and I thought it was a White Claw. But this is more so she doesn't get hung over, and it's a Red Bull and vodka half-gallon drink or gallon drink.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't really drink too much anymore. Yeah. I drank way too much in my 20s. But as you probably observed a few times. But my personal theory is you can't be an alcoholic in your 20s, because I think the entire test of are you an alcoholic is when you hit 30, do you still drink like you're in your 20s?
Mm-hmm.
So And I hit 30 and I'm like, you know what? This doesn't feel good in the morning anymore. I think
Right.
I'm gonna tone it down. But with Gen Z, I actually really like Gen Z. Like everyone I meet from Gen Z seems like they have a better head on their shoulders than younger millennials, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But but sometimes it's difficult because I'll be like, talking about stuff. I'll be talking about like I was talking about MySpace, and I was talking about
They weren't
MySpace versus.
alive.
I was like MySpace versus Facebook. Well, at least MySpace never destabilized society. And they're like, dude, when MySpace was a thing, I was like a baby.
Yeah.
And what am I supposed to say to that? Um, so there we were playing Cards Against Humanity,
Yeah.
and one of the cards was AJ Slater. And one of my Gen Z friends said, "What's an AJ Slater?" And I said, "Oh my God, someday you'll be playing this with people younger than you, and one of them will say, 'What's a Billie Eilish?'" I
Uh-huh.
don't know.
Yeah. What's an AJ Slater? You know him as Mario Lopez from the New Year's Eve, Rockin' New Year's Eve show. He's their Dick Clark,
Oh, okay.
right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Isn't Mario Lopez kind of a Dick Clark now?
Yeah, I mean, I guess Ryan Seacrest was trying to fill that role for a
Yeah.
while, and
So, all right, Marty, in the last like 3 weeks, you turned 40, became a dad, and launched a new novel.
yeah,
That's so. At what point did you realize everything was going to hit the same time?
I also delayed my paternity leave at work and went straight back to work. So it's just been and I was
Brutal.
like, yeah, I can handle this. I can do it. Why not? And now I'm just like I don't know what day it is. I don't think I don't, have I showered this week. But it's being a dad is cool. I like being a dad. I've been practicing dad jokes my entire life. And my friends were like, "You're the most dad joke guy who isn't a dad yet." So I was ready there. Actually, in the hospital, the baby was losing too much weight. They're
Mm-hmm.
like, if the baby loses like 10% of its body weight after being born, like it's an emergency. And so for the first 2 days of the baby's life, we the nurses had us just furiously feeding the baby milk, just
Yeah.
around the clock, like desperately trying to get the baby's weight
Mm.
back up. Uh, and my wife was pumping constantly, and I was bottle feeding, and you couldn't even do the bottle the first day because it had to be a syringe. So I'm just like, putting a syringe in the baby's mouth
Oh my gosh.
around the clock every 20, 30 minutes. We had to wake up. There was no sleep. uh I mean, really one of the most intense psychological and physical experiences of our lives, just constantly feeding this baby milk for 2 days straight. And we got her weight to a good place. And by the end, I mean, I'm exhausted, my wife's exhausted, neither one of us has had any personal hygiene during this time.
Uh-huh.
And we're just like slumped over, and I'm like, darling, you are utterly amazing.
Oh.
Utterly with two D's.
Marty.
And my wife did not laugh. My wife did not laugh at all. She just looked at me like, and the nurse laughed, or at least the nurse pretended to laugh. And she's like, "Oh, a dad joke, your first dad joke." She was delighted, but my wife was not.
Well, maybe she'll when it like maybe she will have been blacked out from the exhaustion and won't remember.
No, she remembers that one because I tell everybody that story. So
And then you just went right back to work?
yeah, I thought, I delayed my paternity leave because like I didn't realize in California, and maybe this is nationally, but especially in LA, like apparently you're supposed to sign up for daycare like before you conceive.
Oh no.
The wait lists are just like a year long.
Oh
So we
no.
we didn't start looking into daycare till like midway through the second trimester. And was like,
Yeah.
oh, that was a mistake. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to delay my going back to work. So yeah, I became a dad and launched a book and went back to work and had this. I actually wasn't that emotional about turning 40. A little.
Yeah.
Part of it, uh, I think, is I remember turning 30 and I complained to everybody who would listen I whined and whined about turning 30. I'm not in my 20s anymore. I'm so old. And now it's like I would do unspeakable, unholy things to be 30 again.
Uh-huh.
And I was even like that at 20. I remember I turned 20. I'm like, I'm not a teenager anymore. I'm so old. Who am I? And it's like, nobody wants to hear it. Nobody,
Right.
you know, nobody wants to. One of my friends once told me there's things you can say that make you older than you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's one of those things, complaining about, a new decade. So
Yeah.
I also prefer being an early something than a late something. Like
Mm-hmm.
I like being my early 20s more than my late 20s. I like being my early 30s more than my late 30s. So once you cross that bridge, you know.
Yeah.
And
So
also
now you're like your early 40s.
my wife
Great.
was like, also you're an LA 40. Like, I'm in the best shape of my life. Well, not
Yeah.
anymore. Since we had the baby a month ago, I put on 10 pounds already. But like, my wife would you're an LA 40, but I think an LA 50 is just like a plastic surgery disaster. So,
Yeah.
I'm already getting Facebook ads for like Botox and
Oh
like
no.
in various injections and
Yeah. I mean, but when you moved out to LA, you did like the Marvel diet. Like you did the Marvel body thing, right?
yeah.
Like,
So here's what happened with that. Um, so I was in New York for 10 years, and
yeah.
in New York, like exercise is just going anywhere. I mean, you're just on your feet all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I moved out here, and I'm sitting in my car all the time. Uh, but all my friends were like, "Oh, you're gonna move to LA, and you're gonna become a complete douchebag, and you're gonna be a completely different person, and you're just gonna like talk about your green juice and your
Mm-hmm.
yoga, and try to become a fitness influencer." And so, as a joke, this started as a joke, and I somewhere got lost in it. As a joke, I started putting on my social media. I was at the gym, I do a gym selfie, or hashtag fitness journey, hashtag, Monday inspiration. Just
Right.
like just trolling because I'm a lifelong troll, and I think trolling has become something maybe more cruel and vicious now, but trolling used to be a little more lighthearted, I think, and so
Yeah.
I'm a troll for good, but I just started doing all this dumb hashtag and annoying gym selfies, and then I was like, well, this is fun. I'm just going to start doing it all the time. I'm just going to start going to the gym every day and troll some
Mm-hmm.
more, and I started to notice like I think I can see some abs.
Uh-huh.
The first two, it's like the upper two come in first,
Uh-huh.
and it's like, what is that? I've never seen that before. And so I keep, and as part of the trolling, I'm looking into diet. You're supposed to have X amount of protein, X grams of protein for every pound of body weight. Because it's not enough to work out. You got to load up on protein to do muscle synthesis and grow new muscles. And I start just going down this rabbit hole in the internet of
Uh-huh.
these bro bodybuilder sites, and how to basically how to get swole,
Yep.
and and there's so many male body issues now. I mean, there were always women body issues, and now because of the Marvel movies,
Yeah.
guys have this, like young guys especially. I mean, I've never touched roids or any of that stuff, but apparently that's a huge thing. Is they all feel really insecure because they're all trying to look like Chris Pratt and Chris Hemsworth, and it's not achievable
No.
naturally unless you have god tier genetics. And I mean, there's who knows how many of those superhero actors achieve that naturally. That's a big conversation here
I
in
don't
LA.
think any of them achieve it naturally.
Right, because you look at like
Yeah.
action stars, you look at action stars in like the 80s or even the 90s, and they look like that's the most, if you went to the gym naturally every day, you could probably look like that now. Like they don't look that buff now,
Yeah.
but the action stars now, they're on allegedly the stuff they give to cows. I mean, the hormones they give to
Yeah.
cows to like make them, more muscular
Yeah.
and leaner for their meat. So
Right.
I never did that stuff, but I think I got about as far as you can get uh naturally. And I was just spending hours at the gym every day, and it turned, like I said, it started out as a joke, and then it turned into this sick obsession where people were like, "Oh, your wife must be so attracted to you now,"
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, "No, she's never been less attracted to me in her life because no woman wants to hear about macros."
Right.
And she was like, I was having like protein shakes for dinner, and she's feeling guilty for having pasta.
Right.
It was, and I mean, look, she's a goddess. But like I think at one point, at the absolute peak of it, I was like in actual professional athlete shape
Yeah.
in my late 30s, and it's sort of like, what is the point of this? My friends kept
Mm-hmm.
being like, what is the point of this? Because it's not funny anymore, and it's not funny
Yeah.
to me anymore. I'm like, I've legitimately, and after a while, it's like it wasn't even up for me. It's like, oh, there's, if I pinch my stomach, it became this kind of sickness, and I kind of backed off it a little.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, you did some you did some articles, like you sold some pieces about it, right?
well, no, well, that's the
No?
funny thing. I never sold any pieces, but I did actually book a professional photo shoot on a gay erotica Instagram
Uh-huh.
where it was going to be speedos and stuff. Speedos and sort of yeah, I mean, not like X-rated, but like
Baby
pretty
oil and
pretty spicy. Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Pretty spicy stuff. And I so I follow this protocol for doing a photo shoot, which is like what all the A-list actors do anytime they have a shirtless scene. They so basically there's a week where you are trying to overload your body with water and
Mm-hmm.
flush out all the salts in your body, and you don't
Uh-huh.
have any carbs, and you're basically you're trying to deprive your body of like a ton of nutrients and get all the salt out, um and then at the last minute you have like a crazy amount of carbs, and it and so all the salts out of your body, you're trying to dehydrate, and then you have a bunch of carbs, and it's just supposed to blow your muscles up,
Uh-huh.
and that's how you get that crazy shrink wrapped look. But like my body couldn't handle it, and I was just like throwing up the morning I had the photo shoot booked.
Oh,
I was in the best this was like right before my 30th birthday, and I'm like you know in the best shape ever, and I'm just like throwing up and hurling everywhere. This is when I peaked. I'm like, I became a dad like a week later.
oh no.
Like,
Oh,
I'm never gonna have time to do this again,
right.
and I'm just hurling and horrible headache, and I have to cancel my gay erotica photo shoot.
Yeah.
And that's I think that's the myth of Icarus. I think that's the story of Icarus. I flew a
Mm-hmm.
little too close to the sun. This is becoming this entire interview. I'm not sure anybody wants to hear this.
Well, let's talk about the book.
Sure.
Let's talk about the book. Because I will say there's, this week, the episode of High and Mighty, John Gabris, I don't know if you listen to that podcast.
Oh, he used to be on. I used to work for Guy Code on MTV, and he was
Yeah.
one of the comedians on there.
Yeah.
I think that
So
show would get canceled in 10 seconds today, but
it would not survive today.
maybe
So
Girl Code. But
yeah. So Gabris every year around New Year's does an episode with Mike Mitchell called the Fat Episode, where they talk about their bodies and exercise and their goals for the year. And I think what you said, where there's a lot of like men are starting to have the body issues that women have laid claim to for centuries, I think is really true. And you hear, when I listen on podcasts and I hear comedians talking about intermittent fasting or that sort of stuff, I'm like, that's an eating disorder. Like that's
yeah,
or it's real close. But the ways that men frame it, because and I think it is like I do think the Marvel movies and the new body of the action star, like occasionally one of them will admit, well, to be shirtless in that scene, I had to do all the stuff you're talking about for a week. And that lasts for 1 hour.
yeah.
Like I got to shoot all those scenes immediately.
The funny thing was the reactions from my guy friends versus my female friends. My guy friends were so supportive. Actually, they're like, "This is awesome. You're so jacked. You're ripped. oh my God, you're an inspiration. Some of them were like, tell me how to do this.
Uh-huh.
And they got in great shape. And I actually was becoming a fitness influencer. Like I took a couple of them to, to the gym and showed them like my routine. Like I was actually like their personal trainer kind
Yeah.
of. Guys were super supportive. My lady friends were like, what is supposed to be my reaction to this? Ooh la la. Like, what are you
Right.
Actually, one of them was like, you're going to trigger eating disorders in people. They were kind of more critical.
Uh-huh.
They were either ambivalent or confused or like,
right.
I'd say the enthusiasm definitely came more from my guy friends who are probably maybe feeling inadequate compared to, The Rock or
Right.
Zac Efron or whoever.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the Time Meowchine, a talking cat's Y2K quest to save the world. It's your new novel. It's a time travel novel about well, why don't you tell me?
Sure. So here would be the pitch that I could have sold.
Okay.
In the distant future, not too distant, but it's the worst case scenario for global warming. The oceans can't support life anymore. There's no more rain. The biosphere has decayed. Life on Earth is dying out. Humans are dying out. And so a brilliant scientist looks back at where did history go wrong? Where could we have fixed this? And pinpoints the 2000 election when Al Gore lost. Al Gore, the environmentalist, lost by 300 votes in Florida. And she, as a teenage girl, actually campaigned for Ralph Nader in Florida. So she has to go back and stop her younger self from screwing Al Gore out of the election and dooming the human race.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the version that could have sold. My agent took this manuscript to 40 editors who were all like, okay, I love the Al Gore time travel idea, the Al Gore save the world time travel idea. Why does it star a talking cat? How am I supposed to market this shit? Okay, so here's the version I actually wrote.
Okay.
As I alluded to a second ago. The version I actually wrote, because I tried to write the first version for a year.
Okay.
And it felt preachy. It felt like, liberal wish fulfillment. It felt like kind of like democratic propaganda. I'm like, first off, like half the country isn't going to, they're going to write this off the second they hear Al Gore. And even for myself, I'm just like, art isn't supposed to be partisan, right? It felt, even though I actually genuinely think I genuinely wish I was living in the timeline where Al Gore won. And I think about that probably more than is healthy. Even for me as the writer writing it, I just felt like this is partisan and it doesn't feel fun and this sucks and I couldn't make it work. And then I had the scientist in the future. She had a cat. And I guess getting back to the marijuana and hashish portion of our conversation, I had a weed gummy and I'm sitting on my couch and it just hit me like lightning. What if the cat's the main character? And I wrote it down in my notes and I woke up the next morning and I'm like, huh. And I'm like, okay, what if the cat, I mean, this is the future. So we have brain chips at this point. What if we have and I have a brilliant inventor scientist in the story. What if the inventor scientist has created an AI algorithm that can read animal brains and translate their thoughts into English or, any language. And I'm like, oh, what if the cat can talk? And we're telling the story from the cat's perspective. And the cat doesn't know who Al Gore is. The cat doesn't know who Ralph Nader is.
Right.
I'm basing it on my cat, who is an idiot.
Sure.
So it's like, I guess a super smart cat in the sense that it can talk, but it's kind of an idiot because it's, my
Still
cat.
a cat.
But it's not like, the character is much closer. I mean, we're talking about mice now, which is the opposite of cats, but it's much more like Pinky than the Brain.
Okay.
If I can pull out a 90s reference. And it just clicked. And I wrote 65,000 words over the next few months in just this trance. I had never been in such a creative flow like this since I
Wow.
was a teenager and was really first discovering writing. And I it was also at the beginning of COVID, during like the most intense lockdown
Mm-hmm.
portion when nobody was seeing anyone. So I had no distractions. I was totally in the zone, and it just worked. And you know, the Al Gore time travel story worked with a cat, and it didn't work with humans as the human as the main
Sure.
character. I can't explain it. So like I said, it took me a while to find an agent who would represent this, and I had an agent before, and they were like, "I don't get this one." I finally found one who got it, and he took it to everywhere, every publishing house. And again, they were like, Al Gore time travel story, great. Cat story, how am I supposed to market this shit? And you know, I wound up just like, I believe in this. I'm gonna put it on the Kindle store and see how it does. And you know, I was warned that was a bad idea, but I had already done this once before with my Hemingway book
Mm-hmm.
10 years ago. And look, I don't know if I can get lightning in a bottle twice, but uh, for years I wanted to do a guide to masculinity based on the life and works of Ernest Hemingway.
Mm-hmm.
And the 50th anniversary of Hemingway's death was coming up. And I thought this is going to be the most amazing time to market this book.
Absolutely. Yeah.
50 years since Hemingway. And my agent at the time did the same thing, took it to every publishing house, to every editor. And they were like, first off, nobody your age knows who Hemingway is. I was like 25 at the time.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I guess this was back in like 2007 or so when I think I had that pitch. And uh, I was like, I think they do know who he is because they know the Dos Equis guy. The Dos Equis most interesting man in the world. That's
Mm-hmm.
Hemingway. Actually, I met that guy. I met the actor
Oh my gosh.
at a party, and I'm like, God, what's it? Jonathan Gold, something Jewy, Goldstein or something. And I asked him, "This you're doing Hemingway, right?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm doing Hemingway." And anyway, I'm like, so they get the most interesting man in the world thing. I think they're gonna get the ironic, over the top, you know, guide to masculinity, going to war and
Mm-hmm.
slaughtering thousands of animals to prove, how hairy your chest is. They'll get it. And it was just rejected everywhere. And so I just put it on the Kindle store.
Mm-hmm.
And my agent at the time told me this will be the end of your career self-publishing after you've been traditionally published.
Right.
But I was like, I believe in this. I really believe
And the
in this more than.
timing was right. Like it was, you were what, going to wait another 25 years for a major anniversary of his death?
Well, yeah, and they're like, will people even be okay? So there's 50 years, but will people even be talking about it? Well, it turned out USA Today picked it up.
Wow.
They called the book a laugh out loud parody. It was in the LA Times.
Mm-hmm.
The New York Times asked me to write something. MSNBC asked me to come on and talk about it. I was on national television talking about a self-published book. I mean, it
Amazing.
hit number one on Amazon for parody. And look, I mean, this sounds like bragging. It paid for like a month of rent. Don't get me wrong. But
But
like,
you were still in New York at the time,
but
right? Like,
yeah, but then one of the major publishers came back and they're like, okay, let's do a second edition. Let's expand it a little and we'll put it in bookstores for real. And it sold, it sold decently. And I think that was just a case where when you have an idea that you really believe in, and now there's the technology to distribute it,
mm-hmm.
I think things will find their audience,
Yeah.
or at least they have a chance to now. So, I'm taking a chance on this cat Al Gore thing.
I love it.
This one might be too weird. I don't know, but there's a lot of cat people out there on the internet. So if you love cats and Y2K nostalgia, which is super hot right now, then let me tell you, this is the book for you.
Awesome. I will have it linked in the show notes. People can go pick it up. They should review it. They should share it with their friends. I am someone who carries deep guilt and shame for voting for Ralph Nader in 2000.
I was a little, you know what? I was 17,
Yeah.
so I couldn't vote. But if I could have voted, I would have voted for Ralph Nader.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I was in such a. We talk about we talk about echo chambers now with social media,
Mm-hmm.
but I was in such an echo chamber then that I thought Ralph Nader had a shot at winning because all my friends loved Ralph Nader.
Right.
It didn't hit me somehow. Somehow it didn't hit me like only 3% of the electorate was going to vote for him because everyone I knew was, and
Right.
you know, is this purist. You know, Al Gore is the corporate sellout,
Mm-hmm.
and Ralph Nader is the pure thing, and you know, he's the one who's really fighting for what's good and right and just, and you know, just those 300 votes made the difference between. I mean, look, would we be living in a utopia now if Al Gore had won? You know, probably not. I mean, you know, humanity. It's not like it's not like other countries necessarily would have changed their policies, but you know, the United States, if we had gotten off oil 15
Yeah.
years ago, you know, if we had invested in electric vehicles and renewables. I went back and for this book, I watched the 2000 debates,
Mm-hmm.
and Al Gore is saying we need to invest in renewables and electric technologies, battery powered cars. We can do these things, and then George W. Bush says, you know, we got a lot of coal, and we got to go after it before it's too late. We got to compete in coal. We got to get the coal out. He was an oil guy, and you know, we absolutely did see the EPA gutted, and
Yeah.
I think we would be living in a somewhat different and better world. It might not be utopia, but I was always fascinated by, you know, and then aside from just the environmental stuff, you get, and actually this is a question the book kind of really delves into, is would 9/11 have happened under Gore?
Mm-hmm.
Would the recession have? Maybe not. And there's a lot of debate about that, but it sort of is looking at how history. I'm really fascinated by alternate history. I love those things like The Man in the High Castle and
Mm-hmm.
that Stephen King book about going back and saving JFK,
Yeah.
which is funny because I guess spoiler alert. Did you read that one or watch the show?
I watched Man in the High Castle the first season, but I didn't watch the one about JFK.
Okay. Do you
Go
want
ahead and
this?
spoil it. It won't bother me.
Okay. Spoiler alert for anyone watching. I mean, the book's been out for like 10, 15 years now,
Yeah.
so you have your chance. So the main character saves JFK, but then it actually leads to a new nightmare future where like the world winds up in a nuclear war, and,
Yeah.
and he actually has to go back and
Kill him.
like undo
Oh, no.
his saving JFK to set
I
the
think
timeline
people
right.
underestimate how much LBJ got done. Like,
Yeah, except for
you know, with
Vietnam, you
like
know, he's
the
civil rights
Civil
and
Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, like he was a son of a bitch, but he helped legislate ground like things that did change the course of our country for 50 years until they were all completely gutted in the last 5, but
well, I'm totally fascinated by alternate history, like I said,
yeah.
I couldn't find anybody doing the Al Gore winning story. Um, so I thought this I should do it. I should do the sci-fi time travel version. I actually think somebody did a short story that was just the alternate history. It wasn't the science fiction time travel
Yeah.
version. And I thought there, you know, I'm sort of fascinated by sci-fi. I've always loved sci-fi and time travel stories, and just it seemed like this was if no one else was going to do it, damn it, I was going to do it, and I did it my way, and that involved a talking cat. So
Outstanding. And what is the talking cat's name?
Blink. He is named after Blink 182, who is our protagonist's favorite band.
Nice. An elder, your protagonist, the elder millennial.
Right, and in
The
this future
elderly
timeline,
elder millennial.
as I put it, in this future, all millennials are now elder millennials.
Mm-hmm.
But I do feel as an elder millennial, I'm really half Gen X. I'm half
Yeah.
Gen X and half millennial, and I personally relate to the Gen X side of me more, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I do really like Gen Z because Gen Z reminds me of Gen X in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, because Gen Z was raised by Gen X.
Yeah, they have the ironic sense of humor. Younger millennials, like, they don't have any sense of. You know, I don't want to cast. I mean, everyone talks in these gigantic generational stereotypes, and look, everyone's an individual. I actually did. I'm just going to promote all my things.
Promote it.
I had a book called Killennials, about a generation war between baby boomers and millennials and Gen Z, a civil war along generational lines.
Uh-huh.
That I wrote not long after the 2016 election, because it really felt like older people were going more conservative and younger people were going very, very liberal. But then Charlottesville happened, and
Mm-hmm.
Charlottesville was all these, like, 19, 20-year-olds out with their tiki torches. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh, maybe it's not so simple as old conservative, young liberal. Maybe
Yeah.
there's, every generation is, has individuals in it, and has a spectrum of thought. So whether that thought is for good or for ill. So I think that was a learning moment in terms of judging people just by purely generations.
Yeah. I do. I'm a big fan of the Gen Z kids that I know and young adults. I mean, it's wild to me that like, my youngest nephew's 13. I don't know if he'll ultimately be considered Gen Z or not, but I work with some 23, 24-year-olds who they're fantastic. They're funny. They
Yeah,
are digitally savvy. They are hard workers.
yeah, they all have
Well
terrible
traveled.
they all have
Like,
terrible anxiety disorders, but they're very
yeah.
nice. They're very nice. They're very kind people in my experience, and yeah, funny, and they're growing up. The thing that I get into this in the Time Meowchine a lot, and has very much been my experience talking with them as an elder millennial. We grew up, everybody thought the future would just keep getting better. This
Mm-hmm.
was a very pre 9/11 view. There were all these peace treaties. We had won the Cold War, peace in the Middle East, peace in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the internet was young, all this amazing new technology. It just seemed like lifespans were increasing. We had mapped the human genome. Um, all this incredible stuff was happening. And everybody, look, I don't want to, okay, everybody is the wrong way to
Go ahead.
phrase it.
Go
Everybody's
ahead.
the wrong way to phrase it, because there were people out there who were, I mean, obviously for gay people, there was still a lot of, I mean, marriage wasn't legal yet, and things weren't perfect, but I think that widely there was a sense there were increasing rights, increasing peace, economic prosperity,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and everybody's lot in life would just keep getting a little bit better every year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then somewhere, I guess, you there was 9/11, there was the recession, COVID. And like I said, I started this book at the beginning of COVID when it just truly felt like the world was falling apart.
Yeah.
There were all these fires in California. You remember that in San Francisco, there was those images where the sky was just blood red. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
just, the Charlottesville and Nazis marching in the streets, and then, all
The
these,
Pittsburgh shooting, in the Tree of Life Synagogue.
right, the South Carolina
Yeah.
shooting, and I mean, even on the other side of the political aisle, I had friends, some of whom have very respectable jobs at major corporations, saying, "Well, uh, peaceful protest didn't work, so violence is okay now. Martin Luther King was wrong. Violent protest is okay, uh, because the peaceful way didn't pan out." And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, that feels to me crazy. I'm a hippie at heart. I mean, you know politically I'm more of a moderate, but I'm a hippie at heart. I always say my problem is I have kind of like a liberal heart and a conservative head,
Mm-hmm.
which I think Obama described himself close to that one time. So right now I'm just comparing myself to Obama and Martin Luther King.
I'll
If I,
use that for the promo clip.
Marty, he's just like Martin Luther King and Obama, except Jewish. Uh, wow. Sometimes the depth of my narcissism even shocks me. There's moments of clarity that hit you. Uh, no, I mean, the point I'm getting to is, on the right, everyone was, there was January 6th and there were these riots. And then on the left, I was hearing more and more from my friends, violence is okay. And we have to go all out with some of those things. And I just felt horrified. I felt like the center was not holding. and that's where I really got obsessed with this Al Gore alternate timeline where
Yeah.
things had kept getting better instead of getting worse. That really was a central theme of the book.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the 90s, early 2000s, the Y2Ks, your favorite years. The decade, the era you have been obsessed with before it was cool to be obsessed with.
Yeah, I remember in the early 2000s in my dorm room, I would still be listening to ska music, and
Uh-huh.
people were like, it was like 2002. What are you? Everyone's like into Interpol now,
Uh-huh.
and the Hives. Why are you still listening to the Mighty Mighty Something Real Big Fish and Goldfinger? And yeah, I mean that had totally gone out of style. I was into the 90s nostalgia as soon as the 90s ended, and so it was
Yeah.
fascinating, super fascinating to watch about almost 10 years ago now, I think, when it really started coming back. But now, now you go into stores and it's like all the retro clothes and bucket
It's so
hats and
weird.
everything's baggy, and now we're getting a bit into early Y2K nostalgia where we're kind of looking at those sort of 2000 to 2003 years. Is It's super interesting that people that weren't alive for that are so fascinated by it, and kind of the way that we look at the Beatles, they look at Nirvana,
Yeah.
because the timing, it's the same time cycle.
Yep. Yeah.
They look at Kurt Cobain the way we looked at John Lennon, as
Right.
this guy who we never really knew in our lifetimes, but was our parents all looked up to, and
Was
I
the
guess
musical genius of our parents' generation.
yeah, and I guess they look at Dave Grohl as kind of the McCartney who's still hanging around. You
Uh-huh.
know? uh,
So I graduated high school in 95 and college in 99. I've got a
okay,
couple years on you. And when I had like the moment of like in 89, so in 1989 I was in 6th grade. It's the 20th anniversary of Woodstock. That's when like peace signs and stuff started getting really popular when I was a kid. Like 1960, like late 60s fashion came back.
right.
So I remember like painting peace signs on I had like 5 different pairs of painted jeans, and just my parents didn't have like much in the way of clothes left over for us to take, but they would just sort kind of shake their heads that we were stealing their fashion. And then this realization of like, oh my God, I am now the adult that like my sister's kids are thrilled when they can find my sister and I's vintage t-shirts from high school.
Right.
Right? When they can find vintage treasure at my parents' house in the attic. And it's just weird to be on the other side of the culture as fashion. And it's just like, don't bring back, like don't overpluck your eyebrows. Don't do what we did.
I look back on my pictures with the bleached hair, the frosted tips.
Oh,
I'm like,
yeah.
I don't think that looks good in retrospect on me.
It didn't look good. It wasn't good for anyone. Wasn't good for anyone.
I think it worked on Billy Joe from Green Day, but
yeah.
But yeah, not on me. It's super fascinating, and especially like now that they're getting to like 2001 to 2003 fashion, I'm like, those weren't. I don't remember those as very happy years. I mean,
no,
Iraq, and I was in DC, so there were all those anthrax poisonings, and the sniper who was going around.
Oh, right.
That was and that might have been DC specific, but
it was on the national news though.
Yeah, and you couldn't get on an airplane without worrying about your life, and they wouldn't let you stand up in the airplane for the first 30 minutes of the flight. Originally was you couldn't get up at all. You couldn't go to the bathroom. They were just like, nobody's going to the bathroom on any flight.
Yeah.
I don't know if people were wearing adult diapers or what. But and then it was the first 30 minutes. You couldn't get up. But everywhere that these see something, say something announcements, and people were just angry. People wanted revenge. Even and I mean, I don't want to get too much into politics again, but like even the most liberal people you knew just about wanted revenge. It was a very angry time. But interestingly, the art of that time, the music and the movies are very party heavy. The music is all like club stuff and grinding, like sexy, bringing sexy back, and dirty, like it's a sort of dirty party time that I think that's what's sort of maybe attracting. I think we're kind of coming out of a little bit of a puritanical era, and people are wanting to have fun, and especially with the lockdowns, nobody was having any fun. So maybe that's the attraction to this kind of dirty party time. But I think part of that coming out of, we were all scared out of our lives, scared out of our minds. It's like, we gotta, there's sort of a desperation to some of that. Stuff.
I was living in Durango, Colorado on 9/11. So southwest corner of Colorado. At the time, I worked at Walmart was one of my 3 jobs. So I was working 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. on 9/11 at a Walmart in rural Colorado, where when you work at a 24-hour store, there is a point where you have to shut down all the registers for like 2 minutes to close the books for the day and start them again. And people were hoarding. People had like 2 or 3 carts, buying everything on the shelves, terrified of what was going to come next. And this is in southwestern Colorado. Like nothing was going to happen to us, but we didn't know that. And when we went to shut the registers down just to close the books on the day, people were like, you're going to raise the prices when you turn them back on, aren't you? Are you going to honor the prices? And it was the vibe of that Walmart on those next few days was just wild.
Yeah. I was in DC. It was
much scarier, I assume.
It was my first
actual target.
I think it was my first or second week of college.
Oh, fuck.
And I think classes had like just started. And somehow my dorm got a bomb threat, which I'm not sure they ever found out who did it. I think it was probably just like some frat boy or someone with a horrible sense of humor.
Yeah.
Actually, people, I don't know. People probably assumed it was me, but it wasn't. But, someone called it a bomb threat to our dorm. I think that might have been like the day after 9/11, but they evacuated our entire campus. And so someone on my dorm floor had like an aunt who lived on Capitol Hill who had a condo. So we're like, let's go there. Because, our college was like, bye, kids, get off campus. We don't care where you go. Which was strange in retrospect.
Right.
And so we went to this guy's aunt's condo on Capitol Hill, and you could see, Black Hawk helicopters flying over the Capitol Dome and ambulances. And it was just like, obviously now we know how history went, and we're still standing here, but it really did feel like the apocalypse at the time.
Yeah, it was,
and it did shift. I mean, of course, that's the most obviously 9/11 shifted history, but you really think about not just the war on terror, but how much money we put into that we didn't have when the recession came, that maybe could have helped bail out normal people a bit more. And really just the sense, like I was getting into before, that the world was getting more peaceful, things were improving. I'm not sure we ever psychologically came back from the Iraq War, especially. When we talk about polarization, I think the Iraq War was really where this started, where you have half the country at the other half's throat. We never came back from that in terms of being, that feeling of we're all in it together.
Yeah.
I'm being really depressing for a comedian. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. It's just, just thinking about that time, and I have my, like I lived in Colorado and then I moved up to Chicago in 2002. And Chicago had much more of a, protest culture, obviously, and more independent media to learn about. We had the Reader and we had just more access to alternative views on the war and that the war was bad in a way that there was like just kind of less access to that in Southern Colorado, I think.
Yeah. And people, if you weren't there, it's really hard to put into to words this. And I tried in the Time Meowchine, my silly cat book. I was against the Iraq War, but and I, it sounds like you were too. Only 25% of the country was against it. 75% of the country was for the Iraq War when it started. And now we all look back, even Republicans now are like,
Right.
That was a stupid thing. And they've turned against, the neocon mindset. But at the time, 3 out of 4 Americans wanted that war. And I remember being at like Thanksgiving and being like, I think this is a stupid idea. And
right.
I think I was forgiven a bit for being 18 or whatever at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but you could see the hostility. It's like people were really, really mad if you said this war is a bad idea, because they were still in that 9/11 rage, and no one was thinking clearly about, does Saddam really have anything to do? I mean, we were being told by the president that Saddam was,
the mastermind.
Yeah, I mean, well, Bush, I don't know if you already said mastermind, but the idea that, they might have had some connections, and, they could be preparing for the next 9/11. And nobody knew that there weren't any WMDs. I mean, that shocked everybody. But yeah, I remember just thinking this war is taking our eye off the ball, and it's going to be, it's not going to be good. And that's very eloquent of me. And to say that at that time, I mean, people really, really, really got angry at you that in a way that, I mean, it was cancel culture before cancel culture. You remember the Dixie Chicks, and
Right.
there were some other prominent figures who to go against that at the time was, that took actually bravery, and
Yeah, and they
that's why
did.
Obama was elected, because Obama was the guy who said this war is stupid. And again, comparing myself to Obama, so
You were on the same.
I might change my name legally to Obama Beckerman. I was thinking about that.
You could do Obama Beckerman. You could do Marty Hussein
Barack
Beckerman.
Barack Beckerman.
Barack Beckerman.
That actually kind of has a ring.
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen this yet. I'm going to share my screen. This, I don't know where I think I do know where I saw this. I've got some friends that are like still obsessed with New Kids and stuff. 90s Con coming up in March in Connecticut. The raddest celebration. It is a wild, it's like Full House,
right?
Clueless. It is wild how many celebrities they've got. The Wonder Years.
Yeah, and now that 70s show is back as the 90s show.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think they're doing a good job with it.
If
Have you watched it?
Oh, Jason Marsden. I thought it said James Marsden, but is that James Marsden's younger brother or something?
Oh, maybe from Hocus Pocus and the Goofy movie. See, wow. Mario Lopez.
Say it. Yeah, Saved by the Bell. They got everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually, if I can, I'll keep. Wow, that is Joey Fatone.
Yeah, it is a huge lineup. Oh, there's James Masters.
Yeah, we got Buffy. Yeah, if I can promote another one of my books. And this was when I talk about, I was into 90s nostalgia before it was cool. In 2012, I did a book. It's kind of a novella, long short story called 90s Island.
Mm-hmm.
And I originally wrote it as a screenplay. And the story is that two brothers on the eve of their 30th birthday, now it would be their 40th birthday.
Yeah.
I actually recently updated the script, and it's their 40th birthday. They're totally nostalgic for the 90s. One works at a newspaper and one works at a record store that's closing. This was before vinyl saved record stores, so all the record stores were shutting down. So they both have jobs that are like outdated. They're both obsessed with the 90s, and their dad was obsessed with the 60s and went insane from it. their dad couldn't get over his 60s nostalgia and moved to a hippie commune and abandoned the family. But they got that from him in the same way that I got I think I got my nostalgic worldview from my dad, who always mythologized and obsessed over the 50s and 60s and viewed it as this lost golden era. So they do a Kickstarter on their 30th birthday. They're super drunk, put on Kickstarter. We're going to buy a private island and just recreate the 90s. Only 90s music allowed. Only 90s fashion. Only 90s food. And at first, they wake up and they have millions in donations because BuzzFeed picked it up. And, it got super big on the internet. And at first, it's like they actually do recreate this utopia and everyone's having a blast and they have all these retro bands. But then one of the brothers goes crazy and like starts like executing people for having medicine taken that was invented after the 90s, medicine that was invented in the 2000s. Or like one person's like reading Harry Potter, like book 4 that came out in 2000 and, gets strung up in the village square for and so the other brother has to stop him and realize he has to get over his nostalgia and blah blah. And that was really at the beginning of the 90s retro thing. So to sort of almost see that like we were talking about, you go into stores now and all the stuff is super super retro, was sort of surreal. But so I wrote this as a script originally, and I showed it to the few people I know in Hollywood, and they were like, okay, so this is a fun idea. What you need to understand is that in a book, you can make up anything you want. That's fine. Imagine anything you want. When you're doing a movie, you have to think about budget. And, on this scene right here where you have Smells Like Teen Spirit starts playing.
Right.
And right here, you have a clip from Pulp Fiction. This movie's going to cost $400 million to make, Marty.
It's like Ready Player One.
Yeah.
Right? Like the book has so much more than the movie was ever able to put together because you can just mention
the rights issues. The licensing is like, you're talking about something on the Avatar 2 budget.
Right. Just for the rights. Yeah.
For a comedy. So, I still have hope that one could get made somehow, but, I'm not holding my breath. I'm more focused on my much more marketable idea of a cat time traveling back to get Al Gore elected president.
I love it. Well, Marty, it's been so fun to spend the afternoon with you. The morning, I guess, for you in California. Where can people find you on the internet? Do you want to be found?
You could go to Amazon. That's probably the best. But go to Amazon, look at my books, Marty Beckerman. Go to martybeckerman.com. I've kind of quit doing social media because I realized, they make you do social media to promote books now. That publishers are like, if the author doesn't have so many followers, forget it. But the thing is, I added up how many tweets I'd sent and how many words per tweet average. I mean, you get, 140 characters. I added that up and I realized over a decade, I probably could have written like 10 books. And I'm like, what am I doing with my life? So I've tried to cut social media out. I think a lot of people have. But so don't find me there. Find me on Amazon and I guess my website and probably the gym where I will be exercising my body image issues and away.
Awesome.
And find me in the next Marvel movie starring alongside all the other guys on roids.
Yeah. On Muscle Beach. Do you ever go there? Muscle Beach, is that Santa Monica? Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Venice, yeah.
Venice.
No, I'm not that guy. Nah.
No. Awesome. Well, you can find Finding Favorites anywhere podcasts are available. Please rate and review on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or whatever you listen to this on. Share it with your friends and follow the podcast Finding Faves Pod on Twitter and Instagram. And keep enjoying your favorite things.
Thank you for listening to Finding Favorites with Leah Jones. Please make sure to subscribe and drop us a 5-star review on iTunes. Now, go out and enjoy your favorite things.